Howdy.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, pretty good. How are you?
Doing well, doing well. So some more cough drops. Woohoo! Hopefully it'll help. All right. So how did things go from last week, Aaron? Did you learn anything new?
Yeah, I was playing around with the drop shadow a bit. When you did the wedding rings with the contour for the text,
Okay.
I noticed when I tried to do that on my 2018 version, it did not work out well. So,
You were doing contour, or you were trying to fit text to a path?
or I'm sorry, yeah, it was, you did on the rings, you first did a contour and then you did fit text to path.
Okay.
And when I tried to do it that way, instead of just drawing my own line out of the nodes, it warped it in weird ways. So it might just be the older version that's not doing it right.
And sometimes it's the angle that the
Right.
that your thing is at too. So
Gotcha.
let's see here. I know I got some questions. Tom, you sent me something last week right at the beginning, but I missed it last week. So I'm going to see if I can pull that one up.
Hello, gentlemen.
Howdy.
Hey, Brandy, how you doing?
Good. I'm so much better than I was this time last week.
Good. Good to hear. Okay. Okay. So last week, Tom sent me an email for some things to go over. So I'm going to do those first before we get into our other training. So I'm just going to pull that up here. Get everything set up. Get my keyboard going. Have you been able to watch the videos at all, Brandy, or were you just out?
I was just out.
Out. Well, you can always go back and watch them later, I hope.
Yeah.
All right.
Got a raging kidney. I already told you that.
Yeah, that's no fun. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Hey, Julia. Hi, I don't know if it's Analia or Analia. You're from Canada. So I'm going to guess Analia, but I don't know. So if you got a microphone, you can correct me. But either way, it's good to have you. Screen share.
Hey, Miss Brandy.
Hey there. I just got your text.
Oh, good. Cool.
And 100% yes.
Awesome. Did you get another package?
No.
Oh, never mind. Never mind. I can't tell you. I can't tell you.
I haven't been to my mailbox in probably 4 days.
Okay. Cool beans. Never mind then.
Let's
But
get
I'll be going as soon as this is
I will
over.
say that my videos are much less boring with the ladies in the house. Okay, so Tom last week sent me this design that he's working on for a client. And these images up here in the corner, he wanted to have white. Right now they're a frosted look. So he wanted to know why or how to turn these white. Because when he clicked on it, if you just click on white, it turns the whole thing white, right? And I think, Julia, you actually had the same question the other day. In your case, everything was going black. So I'm going to undo. The reason that that happens is because this is a grouped object. If you look down here, it's a group of 15 objects. And up here, you'll see a hint that they are grouped. And Analia actually asked earlier today how you get these icons to show up. They show up when you select a grouped object. So if I just selected a regular object, they're not going to show up there. If I click on an object that has been grouped, then they will show up. And there are two different ones. There's an ungroup objects and there's an ungroup all objects. The difference is this one will ungroup your objects, but maintain individual groups that are inside that group. This one will ungroup every group if you have nested ones. So I usually click on this one just because that way there will be no groups at all. And that gets us back to the individual different pieces that make up this design. Okay. The easiest way to get this filled in white, instead of having to click on this and go to white and then click on this and go to white and then click on this and go to white, that's a little tedious. So instead what you do is you just grab everything, and instead of grouping, you combine. When you combine it, all of these pieces become a single object that you can fill with whatever color you want. And it's going to show through to what's underneath it there, so that it's showing through to the polish behind it. So that's the easiest way. Now on this one over here, if we come into this one, we're going to ungroup it, and then we're going to combine it and fill it. But you'll notice that some of this text does not work correctly. Okay, it's not showing through to the polish underneath it. The reason for that is because there's something called fill winding. Fill winding is the way in which a fill knows whether or not to basically be inverted when it's combined with something else. And it has to do with the direction of the curve. So this arrow, if we zoom into that little arrow there, you can see that it's pointing in this downward direction. So it's going counterclockwise, which makes it so that it shows through. If we look at these ones, the arrow is pointing clockwise. So if the arrow is pointing clockwise, it doesn't do that. So I would either have to reverse the direction of that curve. So now it's going counterclockwise, and that would do it. But in order to make that happen, I'd have to do that for each of these individual pieces, right? So that's pretty tedious as well. So the easiest way to fix this is to come over to the Dockers, and there is one called Properties. If you don't see the Properties Docker, you can click on the plus sign, and it's going to be way up at the top, very top one, Properties. And then on the second tab of the Properties Docker is the Fill tab. Down here, normally this is collapsed, so you need to expand this section. And then right here, there's a checkbox called Fill Winding. So if we uncheck that, then it's going to fix it for us, okay? Now let's look at these pieces here and see what's going on with these ones. What's happening with these ones is we actually have duplicated pieces. So we've got one object here on top of another object. And because of that, it's not able to show through the correct way. And so for that one, we need to just delete the duplicate pieces, which we would run the remove duplicates for in order to do that. So let's do that and hope that it works. Now, this is my latest code that we've been working on. So it's actually going to tell us how many objects got deleted, 17 in this case. And then we're going to grab it all again, recombine it. And it's almost perfect, except for right here, something happened. So we'll check on this one again. So the reason that remove duplicates didn't work on this particular, in this particular case, is because if we break this apart and we move this out of the way, you'll notice that there's this piece here that's underneath it, but it's not an exact duplicate because it doesn't have this top piece. So that's why it didn't delete it, because it wasn't an exact duplicate. So I'm going to see if, again, this new code is stuff we've been working on, so I don't know if it's going to work, but I'm going to try. I'm going to grab this, hold Control this time, and click on Remove Duplicates. And it didn't do anything, or maybe it did. We'll see. It's still thinking. So the reason that we're changing the Remove Duplicates code is because the old code, the way that it works right now on your versions, if you just select something and hit Remove Duplicates, is it will take all of your design and break it apart, not only into individual objects, but into individual line segments. So everywhere that there's a node, it breaks that node. And the reason it does that is so that it can find overlapping line segments as opposed to overlapping or exact objects that are the same. So that's what it's going to try to do, is delete all of those line segments if the code's actually working. Again, we've been playing with it, so I'm not sure if it will or not. Right now, it's just taking its sweet little time. So I'll give it a second to think. While that's thinking, does anybody have any questions on that? The grouping, ungrouping, combining, does that make sense? Or is it still confusing?
It's still confusing to me.
I think it takes a while to wrap your head around. I really do. It's one of the I think it's one of the things that trips people up most, more than anything. And if I go back to a different program like Gerber, for instance, Gerber works completely different. And so I have a hard time in Gerber because I'm like, well, where's my groups? Why aren't things combined? It works differently. And so I have no idea how it works in Gerber. It doesn't make any sense to me. So I know how you feel, Julia. I do. Tom, did that make sense?
Yeah, I'll just have to rewatch the video again.
For sure. Yeah, I went through it pretty quick there.
Yeah.
But that's what I do. Ungroup, combine, make sure fill winding is unchecked. Those are the major steps. And then just make sure that you don't have duplicate pieces. So I don't know what it's doing. It's taken way too long, so the code must be stuck. So I'm going to just start a new instance of CorelDRAW, and we'll start over here. We'll let that one think in the background. In case you didn't know, if in Windows 10 on the taskbar down here, if you ever want to start a new instance of an open program, if you hold Shift while you click on that button, it will open up a new one for you and keep the other one doing its thing. So bring this down here. Okay. Any questions on anything from last week? No? Okay. We finished covering the toolbox over here. So we've now covered all of the toolbars on top, the toolbox on the left. And today what I'd like to cover is the remainder of the user interface around, and we'll talk about what Dockers are, but we're not going to go into each and every one of them, but we will talk about how they are and kind of how they work. So first things first is the color palette over here. The color palette is how you color in your objects if you want to do a plain old straight colored fill. Okay, when you left click a color palette icon, then it sets what's called the fill color. And you can also see down here on the status bar, the fill color being applied. This gives you the actual RGB values. This is the red, green, and blue numbers that create that color. And then this hashtag and then 663333, that after that, that's, I believe, the hexadecimal code in case you were trying to use that same color on the internet and using HTML to create that color. But left clicking is going to give you that color. Now, this is giving me an RGB color because I have the RGB palette open. There are multiple palettes, and let's see, if we go to Window, Dockers, and Palettes, that's going to open up a Docker over here on the right with the different palettes. So my default palette for this workspace is actually the RGB. If I were to click and instead grab the RGB palette, okay, so here's the RGB one. It looks the exact same. Can't tell any difference in looks. But if I were to fill this one in RGB black, you'll see an RGB 000, that's completely black. If I do it with CMYK, then this is the cyan, magenta, yellow, and black numbers that create that same black color. So it's really black as 100% and 0 on the rest. I should probably technically not use the RGB because my my document default is actually CMYK. And when we go to the shape builder, when we click on it, it uses CMYK values. So it might make more sense for me to have a CMYK palette, but I don't know. Not that that really matters too much. But just so you know, that's what the palette is. And left clicking gives you your fill color. Right clicking gives you an outline. So down here is your outline color and how thick your outline is. You can't see it very well because it's just a hairline. If I changed that hairline to something thicker, then you would see how that outline works. And you're also able to see it a lot better if you don't have a fill. So if we left click on this top option here, then you don't have a fill at all. And then you can see your outline better. So I will right click on black and change this back to hairline to get it back to a normal looking thing here. This is different than going to the wireframe view. Wireframe is not going to show any colors at all in the objects. You can get colors for your different outlines, but it's not going to actually show you the way that it's colored. In the regular view, you would see all these colors. On the color palette, a couple of things to know about is that there's a down arrow here to get to the rest of the colors. There's an over arrow that will give you a fly out of all the colors that are in that palette. And if you click and hold on a color, it will give you alternatives similar to that color. Okay. And then if you, I believe it's control, I want to say, if you hold control and click, yeah, every time you click with this, holding control, it's going to go to a lighter shade of that same color. I don't know if shift does anything or not. I don't think so. But those are just some tips and tricks on the color palette itself. I usually stick to these ones here and don't use a lot of color myself, but occasionally I'll put some colors in. Any questions on the color palette? Oh, okay. So the next thing would be down here along the bottom. This is your status bar. And the status bar right now, if you look at this gear down here in the lower left, is giving me tool hints. So as I switch to different tools, it's giving me a hint on how to use that particular tool. I like to have that set for beginners because it helps you learn how to use the tool itself. There are other options though you can use. So object details, if you click on this object, it's going to tell you how many nodes, the name of it, what layer it's on, that kind of information. Cursor coordinates, that's just giving me the coordinates of where my cursor's at relative to these rulers here. I don't really do coordinate-based stuff very often, so I don't particularly like this option. Document color settings. This is giving me my color settings for my document. I don't do a lot with color because we're not printing. We're actually cutting the vinyl for the most case, or we're sending to a laser that's only black and white. So I don't deal with color a lot, so that's not important to me. So the most important to me is the tool hints, and that's why I have that one selected. And it still tells me what the name of the shape is and what layer it's on. So I really like this one.
Anna-Leah has a question.
Is it typed, or how do you know she has a question? Where did it go?
It's in the chat box.
Ah, I didn't have that open. Thank you very much, Julia.
Yep.
I have a question. How you make all the squares blue? Which squares? Say it in French. Just type it in French and I'll translate it. Not, I won't translate it. Google will translate it. We'll see if we can get Google to translate French to English. So go ahead and ask in French and we'll see if we can figure that out. All right. And Julia, while she's typing that in French, if you will learn French real quick, then we'll get it all done, okay?
I can say, où va la toilette? So where's the toilet? And donnez-moi une Coca-Cola, s'il vous plaît. Give me a Coke, please.
That's more than I know, so you're doing pretty well.
Julie, you're a genius.
Good stuff. Okay. So I'll just keep going on, Analia, until you, oh, come, oh, there we go, here we go. Vous avez fait pour, oh, this is how bad I am in French, okay? Vous avez fait pour avoir toutes les possibilités de tons de bleu. Oh, how did you get all of the blue squares? You just click and hold, and then it pops up. And same thing for any color. You just click and hold, and it's going to pop up the similar colors. So I think that's what you're asking. I'm going to translate it just because I like to learn new things. So we'll translate this and see if it works out. Translate. Does anybody do a lot of non-English stuff on headstones, or is it mostly just English?
Gary does a fair amount.
What languages?
Hebrew and Vietnamese.
Nice. Okay, so the Google translation is you made to have all the possibilities of the shades of blue. Hey, I got it. Okay. And then you said, I don't know if it's clear. It is clear. You did a good job. Thanks, Analia. Okay. So yeah, and I don't use that a lot. I mean, to get to different shades of blue, but you can. What I normally do if I want a different shade of blue is I will, let's say I fill it with a color, okay? I'll normally come down here and double click, which pops up a pop-up of the different colors you can do. And and then, I mean, you can see if you scroll down here, there's all sorts of different colors you can get to, different shades, that sort of stuff. With different, like the fountain fill, you get even gradients like this, which is kind of cool. You can also choose from different palettes, different shades of gray palettes. You can see all the different shades there. So it depends on your palette that you're using, how they'll show up. And you can also do it by name. I mean, so you can see there's all sorts of different ways of choosing colors. A lot of these, when you do vinyl, if you do vinyls and stuff, you can actually get vinyl palettes to match up with your vinyls. Also, if you're doing printing, you know, you can get these palettes that match up with printed things. So there's a lot you can do in there. For monuments, I normally just stick to the basic colors myself. But that's how I would normally do it if I wanted to get a different color. The next thing down here again is the outline. So we have no outline on it right now, but if I double click again on the icon there, it'll pop up the outline pen option, which gives us this part here that we can choose any shade and get to any color, which is nice, right? We can also change the outline width here. You can change the way that you want it to be measured, so in inches instead of points, which is going to be the default. You can choose the style, whether you want it to be a dotted line or whatever the case may be. The miter limit is when you have angles, you know, at what angle should it stop? I'll say it says set the angle at which the shape of sharp angles changes from mitered, pointed to beveled. That's what a mitered limit is. This is newer, the way that the dashes work. You can choose how you want the dashes to show up on your corners, that sort of stuff. Whether you want round corners, beveled corners. So there's all sorts of different things you can do with an outline. How you want the end caps to work if it's just an unclosed shape, then this is how you want it to look. So if I had this line, okay, and I made the outline thicker, so let's say I go 0.1 inches. Right now it's set to have an end cap that's squared off, but if you want to, you can set it to a round cap, and so that way it's just going to round the end of your line. And this one's going to be an extended square, so the square goes beyond the node itself. Those are those options. And then you have all sorts of crazy stuff too. Arrowheads and calligraphy, being able to change the way that your fill works. For monuments, I don't mess with a lot of this stuff, other than sometimes I use arrowheads, but I do that with the macro for finding open shapes. Because what find open shapes does is it will find open shapes that changes the ends to arrowheads so that I can see them better. But that's really all I use arrowheads for, other than sometimes making crosses. But all right, so that is that. And then down here in the very far right, proof colors off. Again, I'm not printing, so I don't need to proof my colors. I don't need to see how they're going to look printed. So I just leave that off. I think you can click it to turn it on, but I don't proof any colors, so I don't use that. Above the property bar, right here, these are your page tabs. This looks a little different in 2021 than it used to. Slightly different, not horrible, but it's a little bit different. So if the version that you're looking at is different, that's why, because this was changed recently. The plus sign will build a new page. The over arrows let you scroll through your pages that you have. This tells you how many pages you have. If you have a lot of pages, you can click on it and go to a certain page if you want to. This button goes to the very front. This button goes to the very last page. And this button will create a new page after the one that you're on. This one does it before the one that you're on. The page tabs themselves have names. If you right click on it, you can rename it, you can move it, you can delete it, you can switch your orientation. You can see how I've got this page that has been named 4/16/2021. That's because I have MemorialDESIGNER by default create the name of a new page as the date that you created that page or the document. And so that way you know when you started working on this particular document. If you use these buttons to create the pages, Corel is not using my tools to do that. And so it's not going to name it by the date. It's going to just give it page 2, page 3, etc. But you can always rename it if you want to. So let's say rename, and we'll call this one, give me just a second here. We will call this, as soon as I figure out how to turn on Do Not Disturb on my phone. Do not disturb, there we go. Maybe approved or something. Sometimes I like to give my pages names depending on what's on them, that sort of stuff. So if this was my approved thing, I'd put it there. In 2021, you just drag these and you can watch them as you drag them, change the order that they're in. It does give a number 2 and number 3 in front of those now. So that you can see which one is page 1, which one is page 2, because we've renamed them. So it's giving that 1 and 2 there. That's it for the page tabs, I believe. Yep, I think that's it. These here are your scroll bars. That's just showing you if you're zoomed in really far, you're gonna have a little gray area because that means you've got a lot of scrolling that you can do. If you're zoomed way out, you're not going to see any white. You're only going to see gray because you can't scroll because there's nothing to scroll to. Same thing for your top and bottom. If you zoom way in, then it's going to give you just a little gray amount so that you can scroll top and bottom. And the last thing is down here by the intersection of these two bars is the navigator. So if you click and drag, and it doesn't really do anything if you're not zoomed in or if you don't have a lot on your page. So I'm just going to build a couple duplicates here, throw some others up here so that you can see how this works. If I'm zoomed in, I can click down here and kind of just quickly navigate around. It's just going to let me pan through my entire document window really quickly. And to get to this, I believe is the N. Yeah, N on the keyboard does the same thing. It pops that up. So if you're zoomed in here and you want to get over there real fast, you can hit N and go like that, and now you're over there. I usually use my zoom keys though, more often than I use the navigator. But that's what that does. I don't remember if we talked about rulers or not, but because I don't remember, we're going to go ahead and talk about them. Rulers are in your design. These are your X. X is this direction, Y is this direction for your coordinates, and they match up with these coordinates here. And the 0, 0 is usually set, you know, when you start your document, it's going to start usually at the lower left of the page border. So if I show the page border, usually 0, 0 is going to be down here at the bottom left of that page. When we build with the shape builder, what it does is okay, with the shape builder, what it does is it sets it normally, actually, so I've got a whole bunch of shapes on here. I got to delete these. The normal method of shape building is to make it so that the center of the shape is on 0. So it's actually off the page border, if you notice that. So that's how that works on the ruler. There is a little dotted line as I move my cursor that you can see where you're at on the ruler in both directions. You can kind of see it right there. And then if you ever wanted to change the X, the 0, 0 coordinate, if you click up here in the upper left-hand corner and drag, you can put it wherever you want. So I'm just going to put it here, and now my new 0, 0 is right there. So if you've got a whole bunch of different objects on your page and you want to work on this one, but you want to work off of numbers that make more sense, you just grab this and put it where you want, and then it will move your 0, 0 for you. Any questions on any of that stuff so far? No? Okay. So this area here, the blank area, that is called the document window. If we look at where the page is located, inside this page border is considered the page. And I usually hide the page border because I don't like working within a page myself. And so I just hide it and don't work off of a page. I'm just working off of the document window itself. But if you do show pages, that's where the page comes into play. And if you change your layout, if you go to options, and let's see where it's at, I don't even remember, customization, I think actually in 2021. So you've got the option of doing a different color for your desktop if you wanted to. That will show you a little bit of a difference there between the page itself and whatever's around it. I don't really like to work this way, so I stick with white myself. You can also change the page background. If you go to, I believe it's under layout, page background. And that way you can tell it what color you want it to be. If I wanted to match this red, I mean, I think it's probably this red, but if I wanted to match it, I can do the color dropper. Well, actually, I think this is a bug because if you do the color dropper, it thinks it's 0. So that doesn't work. Maybe I could come over and do this one though. Anyway. So if you set the solid background color, then it's it should change the background color there as well. I can still see the page border. If I turn it off, I'm not going to see that. But there's still a slight, I don't know if you can see it or not, but on my end, I can see a slight white line between the two. And that's because of, I'm in enhanced view, and enhanced view does what's called anti-aliasing. And so it's trying to anti-alias between those two things. And because they're overlapping, it kind of gets that white thing there. If I go to normal view, you don't actually see that. But I prefer enhanced view because I like my lines and stuff to be nice and pretty. So just so you're aware of the document window options, you can do that. I like white myself. So I leave it at white. And I don't show my page border, so I leave that as white as well.
Cameron, the other day when you were talking about this, changing your workspace environment, one of the things that Gary asked me about the other day is he likes his workspace dark. But you said when you do dark, you have to invert something else, like your fill color, like I want to say it was something to do with fill color.
Yeah, so if I were to go up to the customization and switch to either dark or black for my UI, okay, in order to do that, what it does is it inverts the icons. And because it's inverting icons, my icons for the color chooser get inverted. So white is no longer white, white is black. It's just a picture of the icon itself.
So it'll automatically change it for us.
Yeah, so it's still going to fill in white when I click on this. It's just the icon that shows white is going to be black, and that's because it's inverting the icon.
Okay.
Yeah, but it automatically does that for you. The one thing that does not get inverted at this time is my Dockers. My Dockers stay the color that they are. It is on a future feature list to have a invert button so that you can get a dark UI on the Dockers, like the panels and spacing. You can see how they're not very dark. So those will not be inverted, but all of the standard CorelDRAW stuff inverts itself.
Okay.
They're smart enough to, on some dialogues, and I don't even know if I've got a good example, maybe brightness and contrast or something. No, I don't really have a good example in mind. Anyway, on some of their stuff, they've fixed those buttons so that they're actually not inverted colors. But off the top of my head, I can't think of one that I would actually use that would show that. So yeah, I mean, you can use dark UI. Feel free if that's what you like. You know, if you've got a big screen in front of you and you got things glaring at your face, you know, it's less work on the eyes to have less light pointing at you. So that can definitely help. I myself have always used the light UI or the white one in CorelDRAW, and it's just more comfortable for me. And I like to have a dark UI in Photo Paint. So when I open up Photo Paint, it's dark. That way I can easily tell between the two programs, and it just seems more natural to me. But that's just my preference. So, okay, now I'm going back to regular just because, again, I like. Yeah, and this is what turned these flowers into magenta or pink, or all these little icons into the pink color, because that's the inverted color of whatever it was before, the red or whatever it is.
It's a great color.
Yeah, if you're into that kind of thing, Brandy. Okay, so back to tools, options, customization. That's the nice thing about it, right? Is that you can choose what you like and what you don't like and save it yourself. Because this is what's called a workspace, all of this that we see, everything, all the icons and everything are a workspace, okay? So if you want to have your own workspace that is different from mine, it's a good idea if you want to keep it anyway and get back to it in the future in case something were to go wrong. Or, you know, let's say I do updates or something and have a completely different workspace and you like yours better. If we go up to Window and Workspace and then Other, this is showing the workspace that I'm currently using, MemorialDESIGNER 2021 Pro. If you want to customize your own, I would suggest you make a new one. But what you can do is you can make a new one based off of mine. So you can just say, this is Cameron's workspace, and set that as your current workspace. And the nice thing about that is you can make any changes. You can go to dark, you can, you know, do whatever you want, rearrange things. So if I didn't like these bars here, you know, I can move my bars around and put my tools down here and that sort of stuff. And this is my workspace and it's not messing with the MemorialDESIGNER default one. So if I ever wanted to get back to the default, you just go to Workspace again, Other, and choose the original. Here's mine, there's the original. So you can customize it as much as you want. And you know, I think you should to fit your workflow. I've built the workspace to fit what I like best. And so feel free to change it up on your end. So I'm going to go back to my default workspace just because that's what most people are going to be on. Okay, so the next thing, toolbars. What I just did, I unlocked my toolbars. So if you right click any blank area, you can see lock toolbars is checked. If I uncheck that, then it gives little dotted lines at the beginning of each toolbar, which then lets you move them or put them wherever you want. There's a little white line before toolbars that you click on as well. That will let you slide it in a, you know, whatever direction you want to slide it in. So if I want it to go this way or this way, that will let you slide those. But this little icon here will let you actually bring them off and put them wherever you want. Okay. So you can rearrange your workspace that way. You can then relock it once you have it the way you want. That way you're not accidentally moving toolbars. There are also other standard toolbars that Corel has built. If you like them, you can pull them up, like a zoom toolbar, for instance, or you know, a layout toolbar, whatever the case may be. I don't know where those. Oh, they're popping up on my other screen. That's why you don't see them. All right, so I'll bring them down here. So they've got different toolbars as well. One that Charlie actually asked me the other day was about this one, wheel devices tool panel. And that one works if you've got a Surface device and you got the dial, or if you've got other devices that have wheels on them. This actually works in conjunction with those kind of tools. So there's different things in there that you can do or mess with. But I stick to the standards for the most part, other than I do like my project timer, because it tells me how long I've been working on something. It starts timing it. And so I like to have that one. Okay, so that is toolbars. Have we talked at all about how to move around icons? I don't remember if we've talked about that. If you've got something you want on a toolbar, you can, let's say we've got the rectangle tool and I want it on my toolbar, okay? I can just grab the rectangle tool, holding Control and Alt at the same time. I'm going to click and drag, and then I can let go, and it's going to throw that rectangle tool onto this toolbar up here. What Control does is it makes a copy of the tool, and what Alt does is it moves it. So just by holding Alt, if I just clicked Alt and dragged, it's actually going to move that tool, and that's not what I want. I want it to stay over there. So that's why I hold Control and Alt at the same time. But that's how you move tools around, is holding Alt to move them, Control to copy while you're moving. If you don't want it up there anymore, you hold Alt, you click and drag, but you drag out into the document window and it will give you a little X icon, and then it will be gone as soon as you let go of your mouse. So you can customize your toolbars as well. If you didn't know, you can also, when you have an object selected, right click, and it pops up what are called context menus. These ones are similar to the status bar in that they're going to give you options that work with the context of your document, what's in your document. So if you had these grouped again, and Analia, this is the group icon. If you don't have a grouped object already, this is group. So when you click on group, then it will combine them together. And I don't really know, in French, I want to say, I don't remember what group was, but I think the break apart was like ascender, I don't know. My French is really bad. But anyway, so these, no problem. These will show up that way, but they'll also show up because it's contextual, that it is a group. If I right click on these, they're going to show up here as well. because this is a group, right? And so they'll show up there as well. Okay, any questions on that stuff? No? All right, so the last thing is Dockers. Dockers are these things over here on the right-hand side. And the reason they're called Dockers is because they just dock to the side of the screen and you can collapse them. This icon up here, the 2 arrows pointing to the right, is the collapse. You can collapse them so that you have a much bigger area to work with. If you click on it again, it'll just expand it out. Between the scroll bar and the Docker itself, if you go right in between those, it gives you a line here, which you click and drag, and you can then expand how big you want that Docker to be. So if you want your Docker, for instance, if we're in the fills, if we want your Docker to show more fills, we can just expand it, and then you got a lot more fills there to work with. I like my Dockers as small as I can get them though, so I keep it at the minimum distance. Dockers have tabs, so each tab is a Docker. The CorelDRAW ones all have icons on the top of them. The custom ones, all of my custom ones do not, they don't allow icons. So if you don't see icons, that's why. It's because these ones are custom Memorial Designer tool or Dockers. Most people, this is probably on my top 3 of tech support questions, is people will be like, where did all of my colors go, right? Because they'll hit the X on the Dockers and then all of a sudden all of your Dockers are gone and you don't know where they went. So that happens a lot. Because the collapse button and the X are so close together, I think you hit those quite often. Not to mention the Dockers themselves all have an X too. So if you click the X on the Docker itself, it'll close. And so now I don't have any Dockers at all. In order to get those back, for Memorial Designer, you click on Memorial Designer at the top, and then it will show the Dockers available. There's no checkbox, meaning they're not open. If you click on it, it will have a checkbox, and that means that it's open. If it's a standard CorelDRAW Docker, you can either click on the plus sign over here, okay, and get to it that way, or you can go to Window, Dockers, and there's a list of them. The Memorial Designer ones will show up there as well. Or certain Dockers have a keyboard shortcut. So Properties, Alt-Enter will pop that up. So if I'm using this and I want to know the properties of that object, if I hit Alt and Enter at the same time, it will go to the properties. And that's useful in that case that we showed you before with Tom's design. If we wanted to go and uncheck fill winding, you know, we could go and do that by hitting Alt Enter, because that's the keyboard shortcut. On all of these menu items, keyboard shortcuts will be listed if there is a keyboard shortcut. And I mean, there's a lot of different Dockers. So we're not going to go over what all of those Dockers do in this video, but we will talk about them in a later videos. The ones that I have most often are the Memorial Designer ones. I have objects, which shows all your objects on your page. Sometimes I will have align and distribute. Sometimes I'll have text. There's a lot. So you can open and close them as you wish. There is a little X under each one of these. And since fills is so small, it's really easy to accidentally hit that X on the fills and then it's gone. So that's why you have to come back up here. With rearranging Dockers, if you click on the top blank area of the Docker area and drag it, that will undock it from the side of the screen. And so now they're not docked anymore. So this happened with a customer just this week where it was like this. And so it looked like it was docked. But then when he had his design like this, it was offset, right? And whenever he went and hit F4, it was showing up behind the Docker. He didn't really understand why that happened. The reason that happened is because this had become undocked, but was just floating there. You can have floating Dockers, you can resize them, you know, that sort of stuff. But because it wasn't actually resized, it was only floating, that's why you couldn't tell the difference. In order to redock it, if I move it over to the right-hand side of the screen, as soon as I get to the right-hand side, it'll show a gray box of where it's going to try to dock to. And I will just dock it right there and put it back in place. If you have multiple Dockers and you want to stack them, you can do that as well. Or I'm going to show the tray here because in 2021, the tray has actually changed. I just learned this like yesterday. Before I never used the tray because I didn't, by default, the tray used to be down here. And I don't like how much space it takes. And in 2021, it actually takes up even more space, top and bottom, than it used to. So I don't like having the tray down here. I like having it vertical instead of horizontal. But I actually like having the tray way over here on the left as opposed to the right. So if you grab the tab of the Docker itself, you can grab just a single Docker and move it wherever you want. So I like to have my tray over here. That way I've got my design centered between my Dockers, my fills, and this one, which I use for getting to things that I use a lot. So like rings, things I use often, I'll put in my tray, and that way I can just drag and drop them, put them in place where I want. This is stuff that I use all the time. You know, these specific rings are, because I just started playing with this yesterday, I don't have anything populated, but I would populate this with the things that I like. And it kind of goes in hand in hand with the connect content Docker. So all of my clip art here, if I wanted to, for instance, have my favorite panels, I could create a new tray, and I'm going to rename that tray as panels. Although it won't let me, maybe because I already had a tray named panels, that's why. Sorry, I already had a tray named panels. So I can either drag and drop where I pull those over like this, or in 2021 now you can right click on a panel and say add to whatever tray you want. So add to panels. And now all of a sudden I've got those over here. I like having the tray over here. I can dock it and still, you know, not be too different from the way that I was before, but I can pull it out and get to my quick designs easily. And if I wanted to, I could also have a different Docker open up over here as well. I don't know, let's just say the shape Docker. Okay, so you can have different Dockers set up on either side. You can also dock them to the top or the bottom, or you can just have them floating. So that's how Dockers work. Any questions on that? The rest of the user interface, really, I mean, this just tells you up here in the upper left-hand corner what version you're running. So I'm running Corel 2021 on a 64-bit system. This is the name of my file, Untitled 1. It's untitled because I haven't saved it yet, and it's got a little asterisk after it because I haven't saved it yet. So if I were to save the file and give it a name, it would show up there. Over here on the right, this, if you hover over it, is going to give you your email address that you're logged in as. I'm not going to do that just because I don't want the YouTube video to show my email address. And then you've got your minimize, maximize, and close buttons. That is, I believe, everything as far as the just standard user interface workspace goes. So I'm going to change my defaults back here because I don't like having a white background. Stop it. Okay. That's not right.
I've got a question.
Feel free.
How do we update to 2021? Because mine is 2020.
Okay, so with Memorial Designer, I actually usually recommend that people stay on the version that they're using for about 3 to 5 years. The reason I say that is because most people are not going to use most of what Corel comes out with. Not to say that you wouldn't, you know, if you really want new features and that's what you want, you can get the latest version, okay? Corel stopped making, or they stopped offering upgrade versions. It used to be in the past, you could pay $199 and you can upgrade your version to the latest. They also used to come out with a version every 2 years. Now they've gone to a yearly release, and they've gone away from the upgrading because they've got something called upgrade protection. So if you're on the latest version, within 30 days of purchasing that latest version, you can get on upgrade protection, where you're paying $149 maintenance fee basically every year, and that keeps you up to date every year if you're on a perpetual license. Or you can go subscription based, where you're paying $249 every year and you're always getting the same thing. But for Memorial Designer users, because most of what you're going to use is actually Memorial Designer tools and not CorelDRAW tools, I have you stick with the same version just to save you money. Okay. If you want to, though, we can get you the latest and we can install Memorial Designer on it. That's totally up to you. I support Memorial Designer in CorelDRAW Graphics Suite 2017 through 2021. And so it works in any of those. I mean, it really works in older versions as well, but I only support 2017 through 2021.
Okay.
There are some new things. Like I said, that the tray is actually, it's been revamped. It still exists in 2020, so it's still there. It just looks a little different. Instead of a drop down, you're going to get tabs. Instead of, I mean, they just added something in here called apply, which I was playing with the other day. Lets you, I don't know if I've got anything on here. Basically, it lets you take whatever your object is and apply it as a fill to a design. This won't look good, but if I take this and drag and drop this onto it, it's going to fill it with that particular shape, which is kind of weird, but that's what it will do. So if you build yourself fills, then you can drag and drop fills. But I mean, for the most part, it's very similar. There are other things down here as well for being able to open up and delete and that sort of stuff, but that's going to be there. Multi-page view is new in 2021, where you can see your pages all at the same time. Again, I think it's too confusing for our workflow. If I was building a book or a brochure or something that had multiple pages that I need to see side by side, it makes sense. But for our workflow, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. So again, I don't, you know, that's not something that most people are going to use. There is now new stuff with artificial intelligence and machine learning, that when you do certain tasks, it can incorporate machine learning, which the latest video cards and stuff have that capability built into it, so it speeds the process up. But again, that's only for certain workflows and certain things. And so for the majority of users, you're really not going to see a difference between the versions. One thing that I don't like about 2021 is the zooming is new. And so they've been working on this for a while now, I guess. But as I zoom in and out on this, and you can see how it blinks between the colored and the not colored, I don't like that at all. And sometimes if you're panning, for instance, as I pan, it's not going to show me the colored version, which I don't like that. Anyway, there's different things that in every version, there's things I don't like and things I do. So I try to let you stick to the version that you're on for a while. Good question, though. Anybody else have any questions on what we've covered? I'm going to look at Annalia's text here really fast and translate this from French. Okay, she asks, is this a CMYK or an RGB document? So when you start a new document, okay, normally, by default, CorelDRAW will ask you what kind of document you want in a dialog box. I don't do that because I like it to be fast, and so I hide that. But when you click New, it's going to show up here, and there's different primary color modes that you can choose, RGB or CMYK. And then there's also presets that you can choose if you wanted to change the way that the document is rendered. Again, because I'm not really going to print, I don't care whether it's CMYK or RGB myself. And so I by default, normally I think I'm usually on CMYK, but I've been playing around with things, so it was set for RGB. There's also color settings down here for profiles and stuff. Again, because I'm not printing, I don't mess with all those things because it doesn't matter to me. And so I check this do not show this dialog again every time I start up CorelDRAW, because, or when I do my installs, because I don't like to have to use this dialog, because the page size doesn't matter to me, color mode doesn't matter to me, number of pages, I always start with one page. You know, I don't show this because it takes more time for monuments than what it's worth. If you wanted to, though, you could tell from there how it's set. So hopefully that answered your question there, Analia. Let's see, any other questions? No? Okay, so that gets us to an hour, which is pretty good. We stuck to an hour, that's great. So next time, oh, I wanted to see if there was one more, actually. No, we'll do that next time. Yeah. Next time, what I'd like you to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of homework, okay? I want you to play with Memorial Designer and your tools, and I want you to come up with a question as to how to do something specific for your workflow, okay? So whether it's grouping or ungrouping, or Julia, if you really don't get grouping and ungrouping and combining, let's talk about it some more until it starts sticking, okay?
Sounds like a plan to me.
Yeah,
I would like to be a part of that conversation.
whatever it is, I want you to come up with what's bothering you the most, what you're stuck on the most, and we'll talk about that on Tuesday. But then we'll also get into a little bit more of the tools. You know, depending on the workflow and what you're doing, we're going to use tools to fix it. And so we'll talk more in depth about those specific things. And if there are any tools that you want more in-depth information on, please let me know. You can email me ahead of time if you want, so that I can prep, or if you want to send me designs that you're stuck on, we'll pull those up next time. But that sort of stuff. So let's plan on doing that for Tuesday, is questions that you have, places that you're stuck, or where you're just needing more information. Because now that we've covered the workspace and the basics, let's start digging in a little bit more to application. Sound
That
good?
sounds great. Sounds great.
All right, well, we will see you next Tuesday. Thanks for being here, and thank you for your participation.
Cameron,
All right, guys.
thank you so much for doing this for us. This is huge.
We'll see ya.
Okay,
Bye,
bye.
guys.
Bye.
Thank you.